call us dreamers, but to be honest, for us, it can be an actual nightmare.
Victor Manuel Arzate was only 4 when his family brought him across the border into the U.S. without documentation.
No tengo trono ni reina.
He's here legally for now, but like 16,000 other so-called dreamers in the state, he's worried his status could soon be in jeopardy.
First day in office, we're going to close up the border.
Are they scared?
Yes, yes, there's always that fear.
Lawmakers are trying to turn that fear into hope with a new Washington state measure allowing dreamers to become police officers.
This is just giving them an opportunity to be employed in a field that needs more people that represent the communities that they're in.
Transport.
And with 5 new regional training academies, finding local recruits, including dreamers, could help in the struggle to hire more officers.
911 dispatch.
We're able to get people in much quicker and get that wait list down.
How well is the new law working to improve police recruitment in Washington?
I want the DACA recipients to know there's a space for you.
Our panel of experts weighs in.
We are last in the nation in staffing per capita for law enforcement.
Trust the process and trust the fact that we are doing everything we can.
Balancing police hiring efforts and immigration policy. Next on City Inside Out. Welcome to City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. A new state program meant to help hire more law enforcement officers and create more diverse police departments faces an uncertain future. This April, State Senate Bill 6157 cleared the way for DACA recipients, undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children, to become police officers or other civil service workers. But with looming threats of mass deportations and a wave of anti-immigrant rhetoric, the effort to help so-called dreamers become cops is still just a dream.
Con dinero y sin dinero, yo hago siempre lo que quiero.
The song is a traditional Mexican classic, a story of a man with money or without who follows his own law and considers himself a king.
No tengo trono ni reina.
But behind the swagger in this music, there is fear for Victor Manuel Arzate. He's a so-called dreamer whose family brought him to the U.S. as a child, undocumented, about 20 years ago.
They call us dreamers, but to be honest, for us, it can be an actual nightmare.
Arzate is one of more than 16,000 immigrants in Washington state with Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival status, or DACA. The 2012 law shields recipients from deportation if they apply for work permits every 2 years and avoid felonies or significant misdemeanors. But that shield is under assault.
On day 1 of my new administration, we will begin the largest deportation operation in American history. We have no choice.
President-elect Trump attempted to end DACA in his first term, but was stopped in the courts. Trump's recent statements indicate he may try to protect dreamers. But Arzate, who's dreamed about serving in the Tri-Cities as a police officer since he was a kid, sees an uncertain path ahead.
I'm scared that once he gets in office, that he'll put a lot of barriers in our future.
That future looked clearer back in April, when Washington state passed a law allowing dreamers like Arzate to apply for police officer jobs or other civil service positions. The new law is part of a statewide effort to fight back against officer shortages.
I gotta resist him now.
To that end, the Criminal Justice Training Commission has built regional academies across the state.
We want a diverse police force, right? We realize that's the best way to serve a community.
Dave Miller is director of training for the CJTC.
Is this fine for taking him into custody, having your partner grab the other arm?
He says before academies like this one in Pasco. The CJTC was locked in to sending recruits to its Burien location for training, creating a year-plus backlog for police departments desperately trying to hire officers. But now,
we're getting people that would never, ever be able to become police officers before.
Miller says the wait list is gone and a new diverse generation of recruits is showing up. A major boost for a profession that needs not only new officers, but a new connection to the people it's trying to protect and serve.
Some community members lost some trust in law enforcement in the last few years, so we're trying to build that trust back. And what better way of having the community go out and serve the community?
There's a sense of trust when you're coming to report a crime to someone that looks like you and speaks your language.
Blanche Barajas is the Pasco City Council member who saw the need and built the coalition to pass Washington's law on DACA hiring, a law 4 other states also carry, amidst a raging debate over immigration across the U.S.
It's not that we're bringing in people out of other countries to give them a badge and a gun. We're giving opportunity of employment to people that have grown up in this country.
Thus far, no Dreamers have completed the process to become an officer in Washington state. Barajas says that's due to a lack of outreach and heightened anxiety from Dreamers about their status in a new presidential administration.
It's understandable, but we just need to keep supporting the youth that really want to do this. It's the young people in our community that are going to decide our future.
Young people like Arzate, a dreamer with a wake-up call for anyone concerned about public safety and immigration reform. It turns out the kid who always wanted to be a cop is singing from the same page you are.
Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to protect our home. That's about it.
And welcome back to City Inside Out. I'm Brian Callanan. Very glad you're with us. And joining us to discuss this very complex topic a little bit further, we have with us State Senator John Lovich, the Democrat from Mill Creek in the 44th Legislative District, a former state trooper too. Thanks very much for being here, Senator.
Glad to be here, Brian. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. Also have with us Monica Alexander. She is Executive Director of the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, CJTC. Monica, good to see you too.
Thank you. You also.
And also with us, Steve Strachan is here, former King County Sheriff, now the Executive Director of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, I should say. Steve, great to see you again.
Good to be here, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that also former sheriff of Snohomish County.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. We got to make sure we get the badges out here. All right. Well, before we get into some of the background of this topic here, I want to get some of the backstory. And Senator Lovich, you sponsored Senate Bill 6157 to allow Dreamers, DACA recipients, to become police officers. Why? Why'd you do that?
So, first of all, thanks for having us today. And, you know, we look around the law enforcement profession and we realize and recognize that we probably need to change the culture of the profession. And to change that culture, we have to bring people in who will more represent the communities that they serve in. And I was thinking about this, and actually I have to give Steve a little credit and Director Alexander a little credit. He came to me, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. They were thinking about the same thing. And when we all get together with these ideas in Olympia, that was what we ended up doing, and it was a smooth piece of legislation that we were able to get through. And I believe strongly that we're going to bring people into the profession that have traditionally not had the opportunity to serve before.
Okay, and we're going to dive into that issue a little further. Thank you very much for that, Senator. Monica, I'm thinking about the CJTC. It's opened several regional academies around the state as a way to reach out to possible new recruits, including Dreamers. Can you talk about this importance of hiring officers from different communities to work in those communities? Because this whole idea of hiring a diverse group of officers, many of whom might speak a language in addition to English, I know it's an important part of your work now and has been for many years.
Yes, and we are so excited to have the regional academies because exactly what you said, they're training in the place where they're going to police. They're living, training, and working in the same community, so they're going to know the community. And when you know your community, I think crime will start going down because people will trust the police more. And you mentioned this is really important, speaking more than one language, speaking English and right? And so you're communicating well with the community that you're serving. And that also goes to what Senator Lovich said in changing the culture. We're seeing single mothers, dads that said they wouldn't have joined law enforcement until their children are in school and they have newborns, but because they can stay at home and go to training and treat it like a job, we're seeing some really great results from this.
Yeah, rather than going 19 weeks over to Burien and Normandy Park.
It's beautiful, but...
Yeah, right. There's other places to do this.
Yes.
Steve, I wanted to talk about this plan to increase the officer hiring pool with Dreamers. It's not just a matter of, boy, that'd be really nice to have. It just feels like something our state really, really needs. I wanted to focus on the police hiring shortage. You've been talking about this a lot. It's in our state and around the country. How can a program like this maybe help with that?
Well, and I've said it a lot, but we are last in the nation in staffing per capita for law enforcement, and our associations talked a lot about it. And of course, the great question is, what do we do about it? How do we move forward? The senator, the director have been part of that as well. And a huge part of that is not only creating the systems to hire more people and to start to solve that problem, but to remove the impediments, to remove the hurdles from people who may want to become police officers, and to increase recruiting, to make it more accessible, as the director said. And as she was talking about that, it really occurred to me, and I've talked to the senator about this too, it creates a huge hurdle, even for the training portion, as you mentioned, to move to Burien if you're a single mom in the Tri-Cities,
sure,
or a dad in Spokane. And to open that up not only increases capacity for training, but it enables a whole new layer of people, the people that we need the most, who are really reflective of those communities. And it goes back to, you've both heard this a million times, Robert Peel, you know, the father of law enforcement. The police are the community are the police.
Right.
And this is absolutely a perfect reflection of that.
Thank you. And I want to work on some of the different challenges that are going on with this program. And Senator Lovich, maybe I can start with you. I talked with Councilmember Blanche Barajas in Pasco, who lobbied for Senate Bill 6157, and she told me that no local Dreamers have taken advantage of this program as of yet, even though it's been a state law for several months. One Dreamer told me he's very scared. He's hearing about mass deportations in a new Trump administration. He's very afraid. I should point out the president-elect has said in the media he's open to this idea of helping Dreamers, but it's just unclear what's next. What do you say to Dreamers who are afraid about signing up to be a police officer?
So what I would tell them, and that's a great question, I would tell them to just trust the process. Trust the process and trust the fact that we are doing everything we can. And then none of us can predict what the president-elect is going to do or is going to say. But what we all need to know is that we have people in place. We have a governor. We have a new attorney general that will be kind of that backstop for those things. And I would just tell those Dreamers to really trust the process. And we're going to do everything we can to apply. We're asking them to apply, to step up to the plate, and let them know that we're going to do what we can to get them into the process, into the system.
Thank you. And Monica, is there anything the CJTC can do to help Dreamers feel more comfortable with this process of becoming a cop?
I think, taking the training to their community could be helpful. Not having to leave your family and your support base. Like you mentioned, going over to Burien, it's 19 and a half weeks. And leaving your family for that long period of time, especially in the winter when the passes sometimes are closed and they can't get back home on the weekends, I think having a support base is huge. And we will support people coming in. I love the diversity. I love seeing people that are going to reach out into their own communities and bring more people in. But we have to love the job to bring people to the job. And I think that's really important.
Okay. Thank you for that. And Steve, I always save the toughest questions for you. I wanted to talk about this because this measure to allow Dreamers to become officers earned bipartisan support from the legislature. Police departments around the state were generally supportive of it too. But I think about this new heightened focus on our immigration system. And if that puts a strain on law enforcement, I'm just wondering if officers are saying, okay, which law applies here? We want to encourage Dreamers to be signing up for this, but maybe we're going to be asked to deport them. I'm just trying to figure out how an officer would balance that out.
It's a great question. I'll say first and foremost that, in fact, our association sent out a statement just yesterday saying local law enforcement, sheriff's offices, police departments focus on state laws. We do not have any direct authority under the federal government at all. We are under Washington state law. We do not house people in local jails purely for immigration status. And we want to say loud and clear statewide, every chief, every sheriff, that no one should be afraid to call 911 for their local law enforcement because of immigration status. But period, full stop. Getting back to your question, the lack of stability, the lack of predictability of this issue, it is, of course, a controversial issue. It's a wedge issue politically, let's be frank. As we enter into a new administration, as you mentioned, Brian, the president-elect has indicated that he wants to, I think the phrase was, he wants to make a deal on DACA status. I have yet to hear of a chief or a sheriff who has been reluctant or who refuses to consider DACA applicants. I think it's a matter of, frankly, the applicants being comfortable. And I would just echo what the senator said, which is trust the system. And this is local government saying, we need you. And one of the biggest proponents of this bill in the first place, when I asked Councilmember Barajas, you know, we need support from sheriffs and chiefs. And she immediately went to her sheriff, Franklin County Sheriff Jim Raymond, a very conservative Eastern Washington sheriff, and he was 100% behind it. So these are members of our community, and that's what he said loud and clear. Yeah. We want people with that status to become part of law enforcement, and I believe, I'm certainly hopeful, that it's going to be better resolved so that people have that stability moving forward.
And Brian, can I just follow up on something that Steve said? He talked about the fact that we need them. We also want them to know we want them. These agencies, I've talked with sheriffs and police chiefs, they want these recipients. They want these DACA recipients, and we want them to feel welcome. And so, you know, I will just say this again, trust the process that we're going through, because these members of these communities are going to make a huge difference in the profession of law enforcement. So we want them.
I understand that. It's just this uncertainty, I guess, that Steve's talking about. Is there a way to overcome that from a legislative level? I'm trying to figure out how you look at this, Senator.
So what I will say is to do what we're doing right now, is to do some messaging. We probably need to do a better job of messaging this, a better job of talking about this. And then programs like this will I think, make a difference. And I'm going to every opportunity that I get, I'm going to be out talking about this and try and talk with other people to try and really, really, really emphasize the great work that we know that they're going to do and not have them live in fear. And that's just so unfortunate.
Yeah. Monica, maybe I can draw you in here because I know your job includes getting recruits ready physically and mentally. I'm just trying to figure out how you approach a different political atmosphere over the next 4 years. Does it affect the way you train recruits, or can you talk to me about that?
I think that our curriculum is going to be what it is. We are training people to serve their communities, to be humble, to follow the law, the state laws, and to do their job, and to also learn how to take care of themselves while they're taking care of their communities. And so I don't see where we're going to really change our curriculum and what we're teaching, because we teach to state law.
Yeah, and I guess, Senator Lovich, just to wrap up this thought here, I know Governor-elect Ferguson has talked a lot about getting ready for a new Trump administration, making sure the rights of immigrants in Washington are protected, among other things. I mentioned Dreamers really being concerned about the president-elect. Do you have a concern level about the next 4 years and what they're going to bring?
I think probably I do. Only because I spent a lot of time in classrooms, and I remember being in a classroom not too long ago, and I remember a young Hispanic student there just looking at me, and the question she asked just indicated a lot of fear. And so what is happening is that they're creating fear out in the community, and that's so unfortunate. But I believe what Steve said. We apply the state law in our state, and I think these students and these DACA recipients, they shouldn't have to worry about this.
Okay.
So I'm concerned, but am I worried? Probably not.
Okay. All right. There's going to be a lot ahead for these DACA recipients for sure. And I know they're going to be hoping to, hopefully, more of them will go through this program. Monica, I wanted to talk to you about your work in the State Patrol. You started in 1996. You were 5 years old when you started there. Do I have that?
That is exactly right.
Do I have that exactly right? But just going down this path, you were the first black sergeant the Washington State Patrol ever had in 2003. When it comes to lack of diversity, you have lived through that. When it comes to not getting the same opportunities as your colleagues, you've lived through that too. And it just seemed to remind me a lot of what I was hearing from the Dreamers, these different young people I've talked to. And I just wanted to go down this path a little bit further because I know it's an issue within law enforcement too. How do you train officers when it comes to discrimination, and why is that important to the future of policing?
So I think it's really important just to do your work. You go to work and do a good job. And sometimes it works for you and sometimes it doesn't. But you don't give up. You just keep working. And you keep working towards whatever your goal is. Being the first African-American female to be promoted to sergeant was not an easy thing, but it was so rewarding. And I still feel rewards from that because I still feel that moment. And I want other people to feel that moment. Maybe not being the first, but having the opportunity to lead in an organization that they love. I love the State Patrol. I think it's a great organization. And was every day perfect? Absolutely not. But every day is not perfect any place. I would do it all over again if I had to, because I think it is so good. And I think also it sends a message to women and people of color that there's a space for you. But you have to create that space by going in. It's not going to happen if you're on the outside of it. And so I want the DACA recipients to know there's a space for you. We're opening those doors for you. We want to see you come in, and we're going to treat you fairly at the academy. And then when you move on into your agency, I believe that you can have those things that you dream about.
I do want to talk about that a little further, though. There is some training that you're putting recruits through when it comes to discrimination, trying to help them understand different communities and what they're all about. Could you touch on that, please?
And it's a wide variety of training. And some, let me be really clear and honest, we have pushback on some of that training, but we know it is good because you're serving everybody in that community, and everybody in that community comes from different walks of life. We're not teaching them everything they'll ever know about different communities. We're just trying to give them a taste of and how to be respectful.
Race and policing, things of this nature? Yeah.
Race and policing. We talk about the Holocaust for Humanity teaches a course, the LGBTQIA community. All of those people aren't just a part of our community, they're part of our communities that we work with. All of those people are in law enforcement. So we're respecting our communities on the outside of law enforcement, but also respecting the people that you're working with.
Brian, can I just say this? And Monica, Director Alexander will never tell you this, but I think she finished #1 on the lieutenant's exam.
On the sergeant's exam.
On the sergeant's exam. And she didn't just make sergeant, she was #1 on the entire list. And I took that test probably 5 times. And it is the most competitive examination you can take. And she is the person that I know so many young people saw out there, and they could look at her and say to themselves, this is who I can be out in the community. And I just want to commend her for that. She's just been a stand-up person, and I really appreciate her leadership.
I appreciate you saying that, and thank you for sharing some of your story there with us, Monica. And Senator Lovich, I just wanted to kind of go back to some of these different challenges going on with this larger issue here, because I thought in the recent election we had, it just showed a split within communities of color and immigrant populations too. It's this whole idea of who deserves to be here in the United States, that we have a broken immigration system. And I've seen plenty of rhetoric online, maybe you have too, about Senate Bill 6157. If you're not a citizen, there's no way you should have a badge and gun, etc. Do you see a measure like 6157 help changing the perceptions people have about immigrants? Because there's a big debate going on about that now.
I hope it will. I hope it will help change the perception, and I hope as we attract these young men and women to the profession, that people will see that they're out just wanting to do what we've all wanted to do, to serve in their communities. And that's my hope. And I think we just have to keep trying. And I think there's no better state to try and have this proposal than the state of Washington, because we're going to have some great opportunities. So my hope, and I'm a person that's a very, very positive thinking person, so my hope is that it will change the perception.
Senator, I know there are 4 other states that have a law similar to this one. Have you heard of any other success stories? I know California, Virginia, or some of those others out there. Are other states having more luck with this than?
You know, I have not, but then again, you know, it typically takes a while for these things to, by the time the word gets out, and we're going to get the message out, I'm going to do a lot of things to promote this. We're going to see some success. It doesn't happen. Success doesn't always happen overnight with new changes. Change takes time.
Got it. Steve, I wanted to go back to you because I talked with an assistant director of training in Pasco, and he was telling me in the wake of the pandemic, the BLM protests from a few years ago, some community members have lost some trust in law enforcement. He wants to build back that trust by hiring more officers from their local communities. Would you agree with that officers need to gain back trust from the people they serve, and that maybe these programs like Hiring Dreamers could help in that effort? Help me put those two together, please.
100%. And if you look at the last 4 years and the tumult of the murder of George Floyd, the follow-up from that, some of the changes we've seen, I mean, certainly law enforcement's been through a lot in the last 4 years, and then preceding that as well. And building back trust, I would phrase it as we need to make sure that law enforcement is trusted and trustworthy. And that's part of the process that I think that assistant chief is talking about. And I'll go back to that comment about the communities, the police of the community. The best recruiting is not a program. It's not a system. It's relationships. It's all relationships. The senator mentioned that he became a trooper because somebody came up and said, do you want to be a trooper? I thought about the fact that a sheriff reached out to me when I mentioned I might be interested and said, come and see me, spend some time with me. I guarantee my career path changed.
Yeah.
It's about building relationships in the community. The communities, and Pasco is one of them, they're doing actually pretty well on recruiting in the face of all these challenges, are those that are building those relationships, that are reaching out to all parts of their community, including DACA recipients, including persons that aren't traditionally law enforcement officers. And that's where we're seeing success. That's the future of this profession.
Got it. I need to start wrapping up, and I want to do that by asking where you hope this plan to hire more Dreamers as cops is heading, where policing is heading to, maybe. Senator Lovich, I know this has been a challenge here. Haven't had people signing up through this program as of yet, but talk to me about the future of Senate Bill 6157.
I think the future is bright. I think we just have to get the message out, go out into those communities and create more opportunities. The fact that we have regional training academies, we're going to see some great things happen because people are not having to come from Eastern Washington to Burien for 19 weeks. That's the future. And I think with our regional training academies, it's going to change the trajectory, and we're going to get more people into the program. I'm optimistic.
Okay. Monica, maybe some final thoughts here. Do you have a goal for how many Dreamers you want to hire in the next year? Do you have a path clear enough for that to happen? Talk to me about this.
We definitely have a path clear enough for it to happen, and I want to hire as many as want to be a part of this organization. But Steve said something I think is very important. He talked about Sheriff Raymond coming out and saying he wanted good people. I think we need to see more of that from our chiefs and sheriffs so that people feel welcomed into the organization. And I think that'll make all the difference in the world. But you bring them to me, and we're going to train them properly and be ready to be out there.
Okay, thank you for that. Steve, maybe some final thoughts on DACA recipients becoming police officers, how you're hoping to turn around this trend of officer shortages in our state.
You know, whether it be immigration, whether it be policing, I mean, these are issues that are very, they're intense and they're controversial. People have strong feelings about them. And the issue of DACA recipients being able to become police officers, I think is part of this effort of a lot of good people in our state, including Councilmember Barajas and so many others, and the people, the senator and the director, who are working to find common ground. Secure borders and abilities for DACA recipients in our communities to become law enforcement officers are not mutually exclusive. These things can all happen at the same time. And I think as people start to come together and start to figure out ways to move forward as a nation and as a community, now's the time. And hopefully that's what we're going to see over the next several months.
All right. Thank you all for this.
Thank you.
We will be right back.
What are people saying online about Dreamers, immigration, and public safety? One organization says legal status and citizenship for Dreamers is morally right and economically necessary, besides being wildly popular. Another person says closing the border and implementing strict immigration policies are necessary steps to preserve the nation's integrity.
We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattle.gov or find us on social media. Great to have that input, and thank you for all of your expertise and input as well. We will see you next time on City Inside Out.